And with New Orleans, and speaking of New Orleans, let's talk about Derek Carr. After 11 years in the NFL, Derek Carr has officially decided to end his career, to hang him up for good. Um, Made $205 million throughout his NFL career. Unfortunately for him, he's going to have to forego the $30 billion guaranteed that he was supposed to get from the Saints this year. The Saints, they're not going to do anything regarding the $10 million. Correct me if I'm wrong, champ.
Yeah, they're not going to do anything with the $10 million. He's going to have to forego that 30 mil, but they're not going to try to recoup that. And I don't.
Been through a lot. I
Yeah,
mean, obviously, I don't want to talk. Obviously, we all know
the
the
tragedy,
tragedy.
the
That,
tragedy, and his injury. So I mean, hell, I'd have said to hell with football too. I'm just going to be honest with you. Life is more important than football. And when you
absolutely.
go through a travesty, like I can only imagine the pain that triggers for you to just have to go through something like that, man. That's enough, and that will make you say, you know what, I've made enough money to air condition hell, so let me go ahead and let me come down here and sit down with my family because they need me now. They now more than ever than being on the road. Now there was rumors that he was trying to get traded, but those rumors didn't have validity. There's always a story behind somebody, but yeah,
I, I feel bad for Derek Carr, champ, because again, early in his career with the Raiders, he was a promising young quarterback. Year three, that was Derek Carr at his best, and then unfortunately, that leg injury that he
yeah.
suffered. Um, and he
Mm.
was never the same since that leg injury. And you look at all the situations he went through during his time with the Raiders. I mean, obviously, the whole thing with John Gruden, which led to his departure. Of course, the Henry Ruggs third situation. And then, of course, Damon Arnett. And then he goes to New Orleans, obviously because of the money, and also Dennis Allen, who was his head coach for the Raiders at that time, and because of their relationship. And heading into the 2023 season, champ, I had the Saints winning the division because
I
Derek
did.
Carr is the best quarterback on paper. Because Bryce Young is a rookie. We love Baker Mayfield, and we're very proud of the way Baker Mayfield has played over the past couple of years in Tampa. But he's been on but he's now on his fourth team.
Yeah.
And in Atlanta, you had Taylor Heineke and Desmond Ritter, which you've often said Desmond Ritter couldn't pass gas even if you fed him refried beans. It just seemed like with Derek Carr, man, it's just bad luck. And considering what he has gone through right now with the tragedy and with the injuries, nah, it's not worth it for me to play anymore. I've made a good amount of money. I've made over $200 million in the NFL career. I'm still going to make enough money. Life after football, I still can do a lot of other things. My family needs me. My wife needs me. My kids need me. I got more important things to address in my life. And I can't blame Derek Carr for doing what's best for him. You really
Hey,
can't.
you really can't. And you got to think about, look, a lot of things is because of the instability within that Oakland Raiders organization. You got to think about it. In the middle of his career, they moved from Oakland to Las Vegas.
Right.
Not to mention the coach that he went to the playoffs with got fired. It was a revolving door with coaches, and that's why I'm looking this up because, first really was Tom Cable, I believe. And then, yeah, yeah. Ironically, between Jack Del Rio was only his coach for like 2 years. He
So
had
he's
one.
never had the luxury of having a stable head coach.
He was only his head coach for 3 years. He was only his head coach for 3 years. 3 years. So he's never had that luxury of having uh, a good head coach, a spectacular head coach, or even a stable head coach. Then they decided that they want to try out John Gruden again, which, in my humble opinion, is one of the most overrated coaches in the history of the NFL. That's just being honest about it. I
No, you're
mean,
being truthful because again, he had the luxury of winning that Super Bowl with that Tony Dungy defense.
yeah, but that Tony Dungy defense, and when it was time for him to put his stamp on his own players, he did not do it. And before people saying, "Well, it takes a lot to win a Super Bowl," guess what? I use this analogy all the time. Guess what? George Seifert did that as well. He won with Bill Walsh's team in 1989. Everybody knew that was Bill Walsh's team. But years later, he won with his own team in the form of the 94 San Francisco 49ers. He won with that team. So he proved that his coaching was valid. John Gruden did not do that. He ruined Michael Clayton's career, not to mention ran Cadillac Williams into the ground. So guess what? I don't want to hear anything about John Gruden. And like I said, it was, to be honest with you, it was really a regret type of thing with the Raiders. They was really regretting like trading him to the Tampa Bay Bucks because the draft picks that they got really didn't work out what they traded him for, and they wanted to try them back out there again and see if they could recapture that magic. And unfortunately, he didn't have that magic anymore. That magic was long gone. So yeah, he's never had a stable coach. Not to mention when they finally, the way he conducted himself throughout every last one of those coaching, throughout the coaching instability, not having a stable home, having to move all the way from Oakland to Las Vegas in the middle of your career, not having any coaching stability, not having a good front office, just the franchise just being on the rocks all the time. I think he had a very, very decent career. He was a four-time Pro Bowler, was an MVP candidate in 2016, made the playoffs. But guess what? It's only so much instability that you can have in your career before you just say, well, damn, okay, what more can I do? It's only so much the quarterback can do. It's only so much he can do. When you have a very unstable front office, you got an unstable team, when you're switching head coaches every 3 years, when your personnel is getting in trouble, much like the whole Henry Ruggs situation, and when the coach that led you to the playoff after your head coach got fired, although he's within that club, he gets fired. And then you saw a couple years later, Antonio Pierce was brought in as coach. He gets fired just a year afterwards. Now they're bringing in Pete Carroll for the next 3 years. Do I think he's going to make it those 3 years? Yes, because he's Pete Carroll. But after that, what do you do? So it's so much instability within his career and that Oakland Raiders organization. By the time he got to New Orleans, it was just like he was on his last legs. And not to mention some injuries there as well. So, yeah, and that franchise was unstable as well. That was an unstable franchise as well. They haven't been stable since Drew Brees and Sean Payton. So yeah, there was a lot of instability in everywhere that he went. So I don't blame his shortcomings necessarily on him. Some of it has to go through those organizations. When you have an MVP caliber quarterback, which we saw what he could be, When you have those capabilities, if you put a good team around it and give him some stability, hey, we saw what he could do. But when you have coaching changes every 2 years, your owner is not stable. You're bringing in the Kim Kardashian of coaches, that being in John Gruden. Then he gets fired. Then, not to mention, you bring in the coach, your special teams coach. He leads y'all to the playoffs in the wake of all of these adverse things happening on that team. He leads you to the playoff. You don't keep him. You hire someone else. They don't get you nowhere. Then you go from there, and then you hire Antonio Pierce. Less than a year later, he's gone. Guess what? That says a lot about the franchise, not about you. Then you go to another franchise that has not been stable in a good little minute. So guess what? I don't blame all his shortcomings on him as far as Derek Carr is concerned. He had a solid career. He made a bunch of money. Unfortunately, the instability of his organization proved to be his undoing in a lot of ways.
Not to mention, champ, during that time, didn't he have Josh McDaniels as his head coach?
Shit. Man, let me tell you something. I wouldn't hire him to look. I wouldn't hire Josh McDaniels to run my local Dairy Queen, much less be a head coach. My thing is, look, stop retreading these darn head coaches that ain't proved nothing. That was what I'm glad you brought that up. They got rid of the special teams coach that helped lead them to the playoff throughout that tumultuous season. John Gruden get caught with the text messages and all that other stuff. Then you had the Henry Ruggs situation, all of that controversy. The special teams coach comes in and leads you to the playoffs. You go 9-7, and you get rid of him to go with Josh McDaniels, who had a little Spygate scandal of his own in Denver. Remember, they started 6-0. DJ
Did it?
Williams, DJ Williams, Miami Hurricane, all-time great, literally proved this. We had a little Spygate of our own. When that Spygate was going on, we were 6-0. After that, after we got found out and the team started figuring it out, guess what? Down the stretch, we went 2-8. When they stopped cheating, that's when they stopped being good. So guess what? All of this coaching instability, you fire Jack Del Rio and you bring in John Gruden. You fire John Gruden and you bring in Josh McDaniel. How in the blankety blank am I supposed to succeed? I have no direction. I have no stability. Then on top of that, you moved the franchise in the middle of my career, which rightfully so. You want to go to Las Vegas for the glitz and glamour. Fine. You couldn't get a stadium in Oakland. You've been trying to get that stadium in Oakland for the last 30 years. You was trying to get that stadium to the point where you went to Los Angeles for almost 15 years in order to get a stadium there, but you couldn't get it there. So you ended up going back to Oakland. So guess what? There's been a lot of instability with that Oakland / Las Vegas / Los Angeles franchise. It's been instability all over it. So guess what? I don't blame his shortcomings necessarily on Derek Carr. When you are rotating head coaches like cable subscriptions, you're not gonna make
it. BRF, what are your thoughts about Derek Carr announcing his retirement?
I was kind of shocked, actually. I was kind of shocked because I know, like, the news that came out about his injury, and I was thinking, okay, so maybe he'll, get surgery on it and miss the season, kind of get himself right. But then just flat out announces his retirement. I'm like, dang. I mean, you as a Falcons fan, you don't want to talk too bad. I don't necessarily want to talk too bad about the Saints, but I'm like, well, God darn, man, you suck when you force Derek Carr into retirement. You must be a trash organization. Something going on. Like, well, like, what are you doing? And like, and I remember at one point in time, like, there was the conversation was like, if we're like, we were comparing like fringe, top 10, top 12 quarterbacks. We were comparing him and Kirk Cousins. And I was kind of backing him because I felt like Derek Carr didn't always have like he didn't have the weapons always at his disposal the way Kirk Cousins did, like at his peak with the Minnesota Vikings. So I kind of stood with Derek Carr because he was putting up similar numbers to Kirk Cousins, but had nowhere near the receiver talent that Kirk Cousins was able to get in Minnesota. He was able to get peak Adam Thielen. He was able to get, early turning into peak Stephon Diggs, and then the one of the biggest steals in NFL draft history, getting Justin Jefferson where you got him. I mean, just one of the greatest steals ever. So I mean, like, Derek Carr has been like a pretty good quarterback for the most part in his career. Like that 2016 season, like before he got hurt, like he
That
was
was his
like
best.
he was a legit MVP candidate that 2016 season. I seriously thought the Oakland Raiders had a legit shot to get to the AFC title game. The way they looked and the way they played on both sides of the ball, and then Derek Carr got hurt and just like sucked the life out of that team. They couldn't get past their first playoff game. So, like, he's a good quarterback. I mean, and now I'll say this: like when it was when he finally got a team like weapons like around him, like that Devontae Adams and Josh Jacobs and if I'm correct, he still had Darren Waller, before he, started making divorce songs and all that stuff, and he still had Hunter Renfro. I mean, he had a squad, and it was like he didn't really perform up the standards with that squad. And then I heard the New Orleans Saints were acquiring him, and then everybody was kind of handing the division off to the Saints, and I kind of had to bring everybody back a little bit. I was like, yo, slow down, slow down. Derek Carr might have had one of his more underachieving seasons with a stacked offense. So like, let's pump the brakes a little bit. He ain't gonna have the weapons in New Orleans like he did in that 1 year, that his last year in Vegas before he left, that before he had to dip out. The only weapon he was coming into really reliability wise was Alvin Kamara. We didn't know what his skill guys were gonna be like on the outside. I mean, and they got him some weapons. And then, like I said, he was a good quarterback. He was a good quarterback. I'm not gonna sit here and say he wasn't a good quarterback. He was a good quarterback, and I was shocked. But I'm kind of with Champ on this. This speaks on what type of organization you running when you cause a guy like Derek Carr, who for the most part has seemed to be like a model, model citizen, model teammate, like the type of a quarterback guys will run through walls for. When you basically run him into retirement, that's kind of like you're not doing good as a franchise. I mean, you're not stable. Like something's not clicking. I mean,
Not
whatever you got going on in New Orleans is not working, and it's crazy because New Orleans is like the kings of like being above the being like however much above the salary cap, because regardless of what's going on, they find a way to pull out this invisible money that we didn't know they have, and they would go out and add some pieces and kind of bring a little excitement to the team, even though they really don't do anything with it. So it's not like they weren't trying to get in pieces, but it's just like there's just a lot of there's a lot of instability there. There's nothing set in stone, and I kind of hate to say this, but I felt like with the direction the New Orleans Saints look to be going in right now. I hate to say it, but I think he did the right thing for his career, because the New Orleans Saints really weren't going to do anything to better him at this point in time. I mean, the front office, the executives there, they can't be trusted at this point. They cannot be they can't be trusted. And I feel like he did what was best for him. And I don't blame him for doing what he did, because I mean, ultimately at this point, I mean, you're hurt. You're probably going to be out this season, but at the same time, if you don't trust the organization to put you in a situation to come back into a good situation, why stay? I feel like he I don't in a situation like this, I don't blame him for doing what he did if he feels like it's best for him, best for his health and his safety. And I don't blame him. I mean, it's like, I mean, it's a shame. I mean, it's a shame of like I said, we talk about these franchises kind of like falling into irrelevancy and obscurity. It's a shame of what the New Orleans Saints has turned into, because this franchise used to be the darlings of the NFL at one point. If you go back to like Hurricane Katrina and how that city just fought back and didn't give up and brought themselves back up, and the New Orleans Saints being that heart and soul of that, being the beacon of that city's light, and to
Mm-hmm.
bring that and to bring that Super Bowl championship to that city after the last 3 or 4 years of just rebuild and rebuild and rebuild. It felt like that city. It felt like a rebirth for that city. And at that point, I didn't care about being an Atlanta Falcons fan. I was happy to see New Orleans succeed, because New Orleans is one of those cities that deserve to succeed and deserve to thrive. New Orleans is just one of those communities. And to see the front office and what they're doing with that franchise is just a damn shame. It's a
great
damn
city.
shame. And that
It's a great
and
city
that
to visit
city,
too.
exactly, that city deserves a lot better than what the New Orleans Saints are giving them right now. And this is me speaking as a Falcons fan. I'm not speaking out of biases. I'm speaking out of facts and just straight up truth. It is a shame what that front office is doing to that city with that team. They're in salary cap hell. Their quarterback situation is the worst in football. The worst in football. It's not. We can talk about the Cleveland Browns all we want to. The New Orleans Saints quarterback situation is the worst in football.
Worse
Tyler,
than
Tyler
Pittsburgh,
Shaw, Tyler, Tyler Shaw, or Spencer Rattler.
and you
At
could have
least, at
drafted
least
Shador Sanders,
you could
but you
exactly.
decided not to.
I look at the Pittsburgh Steelers quarterback situation. There's more around the Pittsburgh Steelers quarterback situation when it comes to the supporting cast to help them at least attempt to thrive. Same thing with the Cleveland Browns. There's enough there that whoever's going to be the quarterback there at least has some pieces there that they can thrive on. What do the New Orleans Saints really have? Alvin Kamara is still a good back. He's still a good back. Who Chris Olave
Right.
can't stay healthy. Concussions galore. He can't stay healthy. Your most consistent receiving threat right now is probably Rashid Shaheed.
Yep.
And then the defense is medium, and the defense is not that great. Cam Jordan, albeit he's still good, he's getting up there. He's getting up there in age, and it's like, what do you have to bank on? What do you have to ride with or hold on to be like, oh man, you know what? The Saints might shock some people. The Saints might make a run. The Saints, I feel like, aren't going to do a thing. And
Nothing.
it's that front office fault. It's a shame what they've done with that franchise. They are in such limbo. I don't know whether they coming or going. And it's a shame. It's a shame. Like, being a Falcons fan, I look forward to the Falcons Saints rivalry every year, just because we know both teams are going to be in contention for the division. And when they get on the field against each other, we know all hell is going to break loose. It's going to be fireworks, and it's going to be a fun game. I don't trust the front office there with this team anymore until they just find something to stabilize this. I don't know what they do. I don't know what they do. And that city deserves so much better than what that front office is giving them right now. It's a shame.
If you're gonna do something in New Orleans, you're gonna hit up where Champ's gonna hit them daiquiris and po' boys. That's all I can tell you down in New Orleans, man. But I'm still laughing at Champ's reaction when I mentioned the Josh McDaniels one. But of all the head coaches that you hire Josh McDaniels. But again, we all knew Champ how awful he was during his time in Denver.
Josh
Not even good.
McDaniels is Doc Rivers. What Josh McDaniels is Doc Rivers without the championship. He trash.
Mm-hmm.